To know if you guys have ever had major injuries and what your approach to coming back was. You sure have.
I've had two major injuries, like two months that took me out of it. Definitely the longest one that really fucked me up was I had tendinopathy in my thumb, which sounds really benign, but
that fucked you up for a long time.
That fucked me up for about 9 months, I'd say. Actually, no, that's not true. I had about 4 major injuries, actually.
Yeah.
Now that I've thought about it for 42 seconds. The first I had was in 2015. I had 2 really bad shoulder injuries, and I got through them by ignoring it and just squatting 5 or 6 times a week. I couldn't lift a bar overhead. I actually couldn't even lift my arms overhead, to be honest. I couldn't do any work.
So you became the fridge?
Well, probably. So I just did a load of squatting. I've never, to this day, I don't know what the squat injury was, or the shoulder injury was. I have no idea what caused it. That happened twice in the same year on the same shoulder. So the first time was on his low block snatching 140. I made him, and then I destroyed my shoulder just immediately after. And then later that year, I hang snatched 140, and that again murdered my shoulder. It took me out for I'd say a total of 4 months of that year, if not more. Then I had tendinopathy in my thumb. Voodoo flossing saved me there. Tendinopathy for 9 months, I'd say. I couldn't move my thumb in the mornings, my thumb would be just rigid. And then also pre-2015, I'd say maybe 2013 or 2012, I tore a rhomboid on either side within 6 weeks of each other. So I tore one side. That was crippling. That was probably the most debilitating towards general life. So I couldn't put on, there was a student race day and I couldn't put on my own shirt. I could put on t-shirts and stuff very, very slowly, but I just physically couldn't put on my own shirt. I couldn't tie it. Most of them I just ignored, to be honest, except for the thumb tendinopathy one, which I had to put some effort into fixing. But the others I just kind of ignored. Obviously, knowing what I know now, I could probably fix them a bit faster. But that they would be major. There was a lot of injuries actually when you asked about it.
If I start at my feet, I've had full tears and ruptures on my right ankle on the lateral ligaments, so ligaments on the outside. I've partial tear in my ACL on my right knee, meniscus tear in my ACL on my right knee, full quad tear in my vastus lateralis, 6 rib fractures.
Have you had a quad tear?
Yeah, the bump is there.
Fuck.
Vulsion fracture in my collarbone, 6 rib fractures, AC joint on my right and left shoulder, rotator cuff tear in my right shoulder, broken nose, more than 10 concussions, fracture in 2 of the discs in my neck, and that's it. Oh, do I have anything else?
What about your knee? What's the thing with your knee?
Oh, and I've had tendinopathy in my quadriceps tendon. So yeah, a few injuries. Injuries are the reason I'm in this whole mess that we call Seeker Strength. So I couldn't play rugby anymore and started lifting weights.
Voodoo flossing is when you wrap, you get those, basically a resistance band that's just at one long length, and you wrap it around its compression. And that was the only thing that ever helped. It helped basically straight away. But after a couple of weeks, I just wrapped it and hung from a pull-up bar. And it really freed up the tendon along there. But I tried everything else. Tried dry needling, fucking massage, ice, hot. What other did I try? Other kind of therapies.
You tried fucking everything.
Yeah, nothing worked in it except for the voodoo thing.
I think voodoo flossing is good because it's cross fiber frictions, particularly in the forearm, where you can't really stretch your forearm too much. It mashes things.
Connor says he must mostly be duct tape.
A lot of duct tape, yeah. A lot of duct tape and callus.
You used to be a lot more broken before. You used to be way broken.
And mentally as well. Okay, bicep tendonitis on the inside of the elbow doing wide bench. What to do?
It's pretty common.
Yeah.
Mostly it's for that. So obviously you can try the generic things. So, rolling, you can try the flossing, trigger point therapy, mobility. But realistically, probably for that thing, it's a pretty adverse angle for your elbows and the tendons involved. So realistically, the only thing that will kind of reduce the pain on that is just kind of reducing the amount of benching you're doing. And so if it's causing an issue now, you need to be able to build up a tolerance for that. And obviously, there's a lot more that goes into that, but that's more of a load thing rather than it's either change your grip fully, change your bench style, or just kind of put up with it, I suppose.
I'm more when people wide grip bench, I think people make the mistake of their grip is out so wide and they get into this kind of position. If you take the rule of thumb that you never want your wrists to deviate from being over your elbows, you're going to be a hell of a lot better off. So even when you are wide grip benching, your elbows follow yourself out and you never get into this kind of really overarched position, will be that's a much better technical model for you to learn how to bench press with. A great way of learning those movements a small bit better is to go and do floor pressing for a while, or maybe floor press once a week for a while. And you'll get to see that because once your elbows hit the ground, it's very, very easy to see what that angle is like or what the relationship between your wrist and your elbow is like. And that will get rid of that pain almost immediately. I was wondering about the inflammation thing. It's linked to all these problems like arthritis, but you said it's good for recovery. If people are finding correlation between X and blood flow, they will likely find many spurious correlation. So this, a little quick point, not really to do with the question. This brings up a kind of broader point, Matt, in the fact that what's good for sports and what's good for performance and what's good for being an athlete necessarily doesn't necessarily always link in with what's the best thing for you having a long, healthy, pain-free life. Most people who train really, really hard and push, like I'm thinking particularly about powerlifters and weightlifters with this, push things incredibly hard, are going to have long-lasting issues popping up, right? So it's very, very likely that you'll have arthritic issues with wrists, elbows, shoulders, knees, hips, whatever it is. And that's just part of you being an athlete and part of you accepting that you're training quite hard now and it's going to have some effect down the road, right? I've no doubt that that's just going to be part of it. The inflammation thing is a kind of interesting side note to this because when we're saying you want to promote inflammation, you're promoting inflammation that's happening due to you bringing in a very specific stimulus, right? So if I go to the gym and I squat and I have some level of inflammation in my quads or my glutes or my hamstrings, I want that inflammation to be there because that inflammation or I have brought in a stimulus to cause the inflammation to bring about an adaptation. The issue a lot of the times with these kind of autoimmune issues and arthritis and all of that kind of area and inflammation is that is coming from systematic inflammation. So whether that is through poor lifestyle, poor diet, a host of other factors like genetics, when those things come into it and it's systematic and it's there for ages or it's there for a huge amount of time, that then becomes chronic inflammation and the body has to deal with that chronic inflammation through actually adapting itself, not through simply turning on a hormone cascade, bringing about an adaptation, and then going back to baseline again.
Also, it's a tiny look. Do you do that one? You just go really far. Also,
I'm way tighter on this side than I am on that side.
Do you feel it blocking in there?
No, I feel it blocking like here.
That's what it is.
The spiders?
Spiders?
You want the spiders?
So I think probably the main problem with the inflammation thing is probably the use of the word, like the vernacular used when people say inflammation. So inflammation is given a blanket statement in terms of its application on everything, you know. So in the situation where you talk about inflammation for arthritis, that would be correct, you know, but there's different levels of inflammation, multiple different cellular pathways, different things involved in different parts of your immune system inflammation. There's many different reasons for how it's there, how it's gotten rid of, how it happens. So I think probably the issue is that when people say inflammation, they just say inflammation as a blanket statement rather than using inflammation in a specific context. Some of it would be as yet unknown, I suppose, and some of it would be people don't understand the specifics of it, I suppose.